Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
If you don't have the physical habits down, your mental health is always going to be an uphill battle. So if you get those physical foundations down first, that's just going to support you being able to talk it out, being able to implement coping skills. But it's really hard to implement coping skills when you're exhausted. When you're sleep deprived, it's not going to happen.
You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a productivity coach certified in positive psychology and stress management. Join me as we explore ways to live a more proactive, positive life with episodes on productivity, self-awareness, mindset, entrepreneur life, habits and systems, simplicity, fun, and more. I understand overwhelm personally as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife and mom to kids and cats, and as a caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and I'm on a mission to make mental health a topic we discuss without shame and one we prioritize just as we do other aspects of health. We've talked about mental health on the podcast indirectly in a variety of ways, as it relates to things like trauma and stress, and directly with episodes focusing on mental health for men, journaling as a tool to support mental health, and in a special bonus episode on how your mental health is more important than your productivity. Our mental health drives so many aspects of our lives and can either limit or lighten us. The more we understand about it, the better we can tend to it, and the more likely we are to thrive. In early 2024, I attended training in mental health first aid, which was developed to teach participants how to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental illness and substance abuse. I was hoping to learn ways to help my community and clients more, and also believed that by attending, I could help boost the conversation about mental health. It was an eye-opening training and one I'm so grateful I got to experience, but one of my biggest takeaways might surprise you. It was how much impact lifestyle has on our mental health. So many of the choices we make can directly impact our mental health, and that's encouraging. That's why I invited my guest, Keri Cooper, to join us today. As a licensed social worker, a holistic therapist of over 2 decades, and health coach, she has a comprehensive view of wellness. And today, she's showing us how focusing on our physical wellness can have a significant impact on our mental. As a reminder, any episodes of the podcast I mentioned today will be linked in the show notes, and Keri's books are included in the Amazon podcast resources list that you can access on the positivelyproductive.com/resources page. Now let's join Keri. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast, Keri Cooper. I am so happy to talk to you today.
I am so happy to start my morning like this. Thank you.
We talked before about how simple steps are really the key, and that's something we have in common. So I cannot wait to dig into, almost in a meta fashion, simple steps we can take, movement that we can do that's really going to make a difference in so many aspects of our life, and specifically our mental health. Before we dig in, I'd love it if you'd share a little bit about who you are, who you help, and my favorite part of the question is, what makes you light up?
I have been a therapist for, I keep on saying almost 20 years. It's really almost 25 years at this point. So I'll date myself a little bit more. I've been a therapist for almost 25 years. My whole career has been really children and adolescents. That's what I love. That's my passion. But after around 10 years of being in the field, I was very traditionally trained. I was like, we're missing something. These kids are getting all the therapy in the world. I've worked in many different settings. They're getting better, but it's not 100%. Something's amiss. Like, what is it? It wasn't until I had my own children. I have 4 kids. My second child was an absolute nightmare during her, toddler years. Really couldn't figure it out, and then realized that she was pretty sensitive to dairy, and that was impacting her behavior. And listen, it's not always that clear cut or easy, but it opened my mind to, hold on, are we missing something here? I actually went back to school to become a certified health coach so I could learn more about food and how that impacts our mental health, because it's not something you're taught in school. Though right now, 25 years later, they are actually starting to talk about it because the research is so strong. So I really became a holistic therapist. That's what I call myself. And I work with high school and college kids. I also work with families on helping them, guide them on how to make this all better and how they can implement steps. But during COVID, it was a mess. I mean, COVID was horrendous. Parent after parent calling me. I couldn't take on more kids, so I decided to write it all down into books. So I wrote 2 books. One is Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. And the other one is Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Teen Needs to Know, and it's a workbook. And in it, I break it down to 10 things that we need in order to have good mental health. 5 of them are physical, and I think those are the things we're really going to dive into today, because they're so simple. And when I say them, everyone goes, well, yeah, of course, but we're not doing it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones is sleep, and we'll dive into that too. But I feel so passionately about sleep that I actually went back to school again because I really like education. And I got certified as a sleep coach, and I'm actually starting a new business along with the one I already have to help adults sleep. I'm a sleep coach for adults because if mom and dad are not sleeping well, the trickle down effect is severe.
Yeah. And the reason why I love having these conversations, and you, I'm delighted to say, are not the first professional I've had on the podcast who works exclusively with kids. I mean, now you're working with adults as well, but we teach the parents and the parents are going to teach the kids, everybody needs to be part of this conversation. And that's why I love having them here, because no matter who's listening, we all want to be part of this conversation. And we want to find those things where they really are kind of a duh moment, like, oh yeah. And then if we can find the simplest way to prioritize them, oh, we're golden. Okay, so your books will have all 10. And
Yes.
For the sake of time, you're right. We do want to focus on that physical side, but I also think because that's something where, well, actually, I had this idea that sometimes it can feel simpler to do something physical than when we get into the whole idea of mental health and we're thinking, what are our minds doing? And we're asking questions and getting sort of caught up in the thought of it, or trying to figure out how to talk it out. That's been my perspective lately, is I can see where sometimes talking through it can be such a struggle, but doing something physical is less so.
Absolutely. And what I always say is if you don't have the physical habits down, your mental health is always going to be an uphill battle. So if you get those physical foundations down first, that's just going to support you being able to talk it out, being able to implement coping skills. But it's really hard to implement coping skills when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
When you're sleep deprived, it's not going to happen.
I hear a lot of people talk about exercise, and you're right, because it will deplete and calm the stress response, right? And then, like you said, then you've calmed down and then you're able to talk and to focus. But what if you are at burnout? And this is exactly what I deal with clients all the time is, I'm so exhausted. How do I exercise in order to feel better, in order to, it feels like this vicious cycle. So yeah, let's back up and start with the link between our mental and physical health.
Yes. It sounds so obvious that there would be a link, yet everyone forgets it.
Right. This is our reminder.
This is your reminder. What happens in your body impacts how you feel. Not only does our mind, signals to our body of run, flee, tense up, but our body sends the signals back to our brain. So oftentimes I have kids sitting in front of me who are shaking and hunched over. And I say, your body is tense. When your body is tense, it is telling your brain something is wrong. Your brain is not going to relax unless your body's relaxed. So lots of times, actually, it's a great, tip for anxiety. If you're really anxious about something and you can't clear it from your head, clear it from your body. You cannot, they have looked into this scientifically, you cannot have a fully relaxed body, including your breath, and be anxious. it actually doesn't work because of your flight and fight response. So when our bodies are online, it allows our mind to be online as well. And there's a lot of other aspects to our bodies and, all of the chemical makeups and everything. Most of our chemicals are made in our guts. So if we're eating horrendously, we're not producing those chemicals for our brain that we need. And the other big thing that is being talked about right now is, we always say teens are moody. Oh, they're so moody. They're so moody. And even with adults, it's like, oh, that 3 o'clock crash. What we're seeing is it's the blood sugar. When you're eating things that are being processed as sugar, and that doesn't mean you're consuming quote unquote sugar. It means like, you're having a bowl of cereal in the morning, which is just turning into sugar. You're coming up, you're crashing down. You're coming up, you're crashing down. That's what moodiness looks like in our teens. That's what it looks like when adults complain about that 3 o'clock crash. You need to make sure that you're not having your blood sugar up and down, up and down, up and down. It impacts how we feel. So, we sit there and we're like, yeah, of course this makes sense. But we're not on a day-to-day basis making sure we're taking care of ourselves physically.
Yeah. And it's, again, when we are leading lives that this is the area in which I'm, such an advocate is like, are you busy or are you productive? Like what's happening? And
Yes.
Right? We get on this, it really is a roller coaster. You talk about climbing and dipping and crashing. It's this roller coaster ride where we're not stopping to step back, to reflect, to ask the questions. So that's the side that I'm on, like saying, okay, let's think about where we're going with this. And so when that's the case, it makes it a challenge to have healthy habits, to make healthy choices. And then it does become a vicious cycle because I know that when people are on the go, then they're eating fast food. And I'm not here to vilify anything. I'm all about intuitive eating and about enjoying our lives. But at the same time, sometimes we paint ourselves into a corner, so to speak, in terms of the choices that we even have time to make and how we can work out what is best for us, or even take a moment to pay attention to what our body is doing and make those connections.
So you bring up a great point, which is, are you productive or are you just busy? And a lot of times, and this is actually one of the chapters in my book that's not physical, it's about being able to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So we run and we run and we run, and then we don't have time to exercise and we don't have time to sleep and we don't have time for this because we're saying yes, yes, yes to things that we don't want to be saying yes to. One of the reasons why that's so important for me as a therapist with teenagers is because they are seeing this behavior and modeling it. So I have kids who are so busy or who are on the phone with their friends all night long trying to be a crisis counselor. And I'm like, back up. You need boundaries. You need to be able to say no. And when we talk about what that looks like, they talk about most likely their moms
Yeah.
who do everything and then are burnt out, have no patience, and don't take care of themselves. That's what they're learning.
Yeah. And that's why I want to have the conversation here, because then when we think about not only what we need to be our best, we are also showing the next generation what that could look like. It's so important to me as a mom that my epitaph doesn't read, she gave everything until she had nothing left, but instead she showed me how to give so much to herself as well as the rest of the world.
Yes, that is the message, to be able to love and take care of yourself and have your children especially see that.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point about them learning the boundaries, and we can learn from each other and to say, what's your bandwidth in this particular moment? What energy do you have? And it can differ from season to season. There can be some nights or some seasons where they can spend a little more time helping out a friend.
Absolutely.
And other times, right now, my eldest is not only doing all of the schoolwork and all of the music that he normally does, but he's playing tennis on the tennis team. So let me tell you something. There's a lot more, nope, we can't do that. And it can be hard, especially when you want to help and want to do all those things. But yeah, boundaries, we talk about boundaries here on the podcast all the time. Boundaries as far as our own self-care and how we're showing up. And yeah, our kids need to learn that. So all of this, it leads into the choices that we're making. And you said 5. So let's dig into those. And maybe we'll walk away today and pick one.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you which one is the easiest one to pick too, because I do have a favorite when you feel so overwhelmed and you're like, I don't even know where to start.
Love that.
All right. So my 5 physical foundations are water, sleep, food, exercise, and meditation. My favorite one besides sleep, which I do love, the simplest one is water. People do not understand how important hydration is and how dehydrated most of America is. And what the studies are showing is that when people are dehydrated, they are angry, they can't focus, they're not that productive. Your cells need to detox through water. You have to be cleaning out your cells all the time. That way, you're alert, you're good, everything is not regrowing. I'm missing the word.
Essentially renewing, right?
Renewing. Thank you. You need water for that. So, the studies are there. It shows it. We need to be hydrated. And that's not just for your mental health. That's really for your physical health as well. And it's something that everybody could do. And it's something that doesn't require money. There's no excuse to not drink water.
Right.
And I tell parents all the time, get rid of the juice, get rid of the soda, get rid of the energy drinks. The only thing that should be in your house is water. And then that's their only option.
And also, you kind of touched upon this in describing it of the other things that are taking away from the hydration or potentially dehydrating you. And then I'm also thinking too of our activities. Like I said, my eldest is doing tennis right now. So you have physical activity, you have potentially developing muscles. And so your body needs more water to function with that as well. So it's being mindful of like the different levels and the different needs. And what's your take too on, high water content foods as well?
Oh, absolutely. I list them all out in my book as well. That's another great way. Watermelon, fantastic. But it's so important that you're right. If you're exercising, you probably need a little bit more water. Mm-hmm. If you're on certain medications, you need more water.
Good point.
And you can kind of tell when you're dehydrated, your skin's dry, your lips are cracked. Like I had a kid in my office one time. She was complaining about her dry lips. And I said to her, how much water are you drinking? And her response to me was, like this week? No, like today. She's like, I didn't. What? You didn't drink water today? You just go like that and they don't even realize how dehydrated they are. And I get that because when I was younger, I was horrific. I was drinking, iced tea and orange juice all day long and coffee and nothing else. Yep. Did not realize I was dehydrated. It took me 6 years to put this as a New Year's resolution to drink enough water. I finally accomplished it like 10 years ago. And now, like, if I just drink a little bit less water one day, I feel it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so dehydrated. But what happens is your body stops sending signals eventually. They're like, well, she's just not going to give us water anyway. We're going to stop telling her we're dehydrated. It's the same thing that goes into food. When you stop eating for a long period of time, your body stops telling you that you're hungry. It kind of just gives up.
Okay. So drink water. You gave us a guideline as to what we need. And I would also add that sometimes we do get caught up in the bigger steps because they're out there, like the huge the Stanley Cups and things like that. But what I would say to you that I've often found is such a helpful tip is when I get up in the morning, I pour a glass of water and I drink that while I'm getting everybody's stuff together. And before you go to work out, you have a cup of water. It doesn't have to be a lot, enough to anchor the habit. You have to find the timing that works for you, but there are very simple ways that you can incorporate.
Yes. My favorite thing in the morning, I keep a pitcher in my fridge of lemon water.
Mm-hmm.
I just slice up a lemon at the beginning of the week, throw it in there, fill it up with water, keep refilling it throughout the week, change the lemon, once a week. And I drink a whole cup of lemon water every morning. It's the first thing that enters my body.
Love that. So hydrate first and prioritize, because I do drink coffee and you're not prying that out of my hands. Right. However, I'm balancing it out. Even when I've gone out to have adult beverages with friends, I will alternate with water. I'll order my drink and a water at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there are ways to still live your life and then compensate. Awesome. There's food, there's sleep. We have a few more to get through. And I do want to say we had Molly McLaughlin on the podcast talking about sleep. We also had Tanessa Shears talking about biohacking, and she was all about sleep. You were all about sleep. But let's go ahead and do a quick high level on the sleep, and then we'll point to these other episodes to get some sleep, please.
Sleep is crucial for mental health. I mean, I can't talk more highly about it. If you are not well rested, you cannot function. You can't problem solve. You can't realize you're getting anxious. Everything seems overwhelming. You can't handle anything. It's like that pot that's already boiling, and then you add one more thing and it just explodes. That's what happens when we're sleep deprived. We literally can't function. The kids I work with, especially, I know when they're starting to really downward spiral based on their sleep cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the questions I ask almost every time when I see a kid. It's like, how are you sleeping this week? And the moment they're like, I was up to like 3 a.m. Okay, we're heading down.
Right.
Stop, pull back.
What's your take on like the amount of sleep? And please tell me it varies from person to person as well as from teens to adults, because I feel I have always been a person who needs more. And not just because we have a society that elevated this whole, oh, you don't sleep. I mean, I literally had a mom who was kind of the you can sleep when you're dead kind of approach. And I've just...
You're going to die faster.
Yeah, thank you, right? And so it was it was a German work ethic, and it was really tough. And so I'm a cycle breaker when it comes to that. I have always prioritized my sleep and my children's sleep in as much as I'm able to. I can absolutely feel all the things that you describe as soon as I am even a little bit sleep deprived. You talked about a little bit of difference in water, a little bit of difference in sleep for me. And I can absolutely feel a difference in how I show up, the patience that I have, or the lack of patience, just all of it. I can feel such a difference. And so that has been a huge priority. And I do my best. You talk about protecting boundaries, to protect the boundaries of my sleep and my children's. And I've seen a difference. But what are your thoughts on understanding the amount that we need?
I mean, the general is like adults need around 7 until they hit around 65. They need a little bit more. Teens need more. They need around, 8, 9. 9's really good for teens, which is hard when school starts so early. I know some high schools have moved to start a little bit later because they see the studies.
I wish ours would. I really do.
Kids are not meant to wake up at 6 a.m. They just aren't. And that's the other thing, is like the sleep patterns. And some people do need more sleep because it might take them a little bit longer to get into a REM. And you have to know your body. But the people who are like, oh, I could survive on 4 hours of sleep. No, you can't. You're kidding yourself. It's not healthy at all. You need more sleep than that. And again, it's about boundaries and it's about prioritizing. My kids know my rule. There's no electronics in the bedroom at night.
Same.
And my phone as well goes on do not disturb.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not waking up. If there's a crisis, somebody's either going to find me or it's going to wait till the next day.
Yep. Same with mine.
But it's funny because my kids know that this is a priority. They know it's important. And my daughter was at a sleepover one night and she comes home the next day. She's like, Mom, her mom came in the room at 3 a.m. to make her bed. I was like, why is her mom up at 3 a.m? She's like, she was doing laundry. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not okay.
No, you train yourself to go back. I talk about this all the time. If you have to get up to go to the bathroom, have a night light. Again, we talked a lot about this with Molly on the podcast, and just do the things that keep you in that, like you're working with your circadian rhythm as opposed to against it. And with electronics and with these tendencies and with this general societal acceptance of, oh, I'm a perimenopausal woman, and so now I'm going to be an insomniac. No, don't give in to that. We can figure out a way. There are ways that we can still have the good sleep. And you're right. It's all about boundaries. Okay. Now, you mentioned before about the chemicals at play, and chemicals, that's a big part, right, of our mental health in so many ways, just in general, let alone if we have a particular disorder, and that link to gut health. So let's talk about food. That's number 3.
Yeah. Also, just to link that to the sleep, during our sleep, we make chemicals. Like we need to sleep. And it's actually when our fluids get flushed out of our brain at a quicker rate, which is really interesting. Sleep also is impacting your chemicals. So food, you need to have a healthy gut if you're going to make all the chemicals that your brain needs. So your body needs to actually be able to recognize what's being put in it. And a lot of our food right now, it does not recognize.
Mm.
And I think that's really important for people to understand. Like when you're eating a lot of processed food, your body truly doesn't even know what to do with this. A lot of the chemicals that we're ingesting, first of all, is not even allowed in other countries, which is very interesting. Like when you order, even like, let's say McDonald's, like a strawberry shake, in America, it's all chemicals. When you order it in another country like France, It's not. It's actual strawberries because they do not allow the chemicals that we allow. And I think that's really important for people to understand.
That phrase right there, that's a takeaway. I call them auditory highlights, where it's like, imagine you have a highlighter and someone just said something. You're like, I want to highlight this. That your body needs to recognize what you're putting in it. And it probably needs what it recognizes in order to make the chemicals.
Right. It needs nutrients. And in terms of blood sugar, we need protein.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important. And listen, everything is a balance. I do not believe in ever telling anybody that there is bad food. That word should not exist. On Friday night, are we going to order a pizza? You better believe we are. But the rest of the days, am I cooking a home cooked meal? Yes. It's all about the balance. And it's so important for kids to understand that as well. It's okay to have a donut. It's okay to have a slice of cake. You enjoy it. But majority of the time, you need to be giving yourself the nutrients that you need.
My youngest will come home, and especially this happens like with, sleepovers and hanging out and stuff like that, or saying, go into a party and be like, all right, that's going to be a big sugar day. So you'll notice it's not like, well, I can't have the sugar there. I'm not going, no, it's going to be a big sugar day because there's cake and I'm having it. Yes, absolutely. But also it's understanding that maybe you don't partake in extra sugar while you're at home as well. And again, it's understanding how your body's going to feel and learning that early on. I can remember when I was a teen actually feeling sick after too much sugar. But something that you said earlier, and it came to my mind and it comes to my mind now, is that we get to a point where we have certain habits or do certain things where it just becomes familiar. And just because something feels familiar doesn't mean that it's the best thing for us or that the state that we're in. I think it had to do with, sleep deprivation and like running off of 4 hours of sleep or whatever. It's like you might be buzzed and drinking coffee and you're like getting things done and you think that's okay, but there's actually a better state for you to be in. And I think we can find that with food as well. And we also need to know our own thresholds. Some people tolerate carbs and sugar a lot better. I've noticed that as I've gotten older, it's less so. And I just try to find whatever my optimal amount is that's a combination of best for my body and best for the life I want to be living.
Right. And, when we talk about people living in this state and they don't even know any better, sugar addiction, people are so highly addicted to sugar and they don't even realize it until for whatever reason it gets taken away. And then you see the massive withdrawal, like people are withdrawing off of sugar, the headaches, the grouchiness, they're miserable because they don't realize how much sugar they're actually ingesting.
Yeah, it's something to watch for. And I also have noticed because I have many times over reduced my sugar intake for a lot of reasons, a lot of medical reasons and things, and then tasting foods and tasting the natural sweetness of them and being like, whoa, it sounds like a whole new world,
I grew up with an awful diet, as I kind of already touched on, and I was a huge soda addict. That's what I drank a ton of. I gave up soda probably 18 years ago at this point. Recently, we were out somewhere and I was like, you know what? Let me just I'm thirsty. I want something a little bubbly. Let me have a sip of, soda. I took a sip of it and almost gagged. I was like, no, how did I ever ingest this? It was so disgustingly sweet and so artificial. I couldn't even drink it. I was like, how did I live off this? But you don't know when you're in it.
I'm laughing because we just went out to dinner and my family, this is hysterical, and they know I almost always have unsweet iced tea with my meal. That's like my standard drink. And I had one and I took a sip and my eyes flew open and my face contorted and I I just reacted and my whole family was like, they gave you sweet, right? Like they knew. It was just really so funny because they know that I'm not used to that. Yeah, your palate absolutely shifts.
It really changes and it takes some time. And, when people talk about food and diets and everything, don't go into your kitchen with a garbage bag and just be like, I'm throwing out everything unhealthy and starting step by step, unless it's not going to work. Maybe focus on just cooking family dinners. And by the way, when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking family dinners, from scratch and not processed, Get your kids involved. It is a life skill. They need to know how to cook. A lot of kids do not know how to cook at this point. So it's a life skill to get them involved, get them cooking, get them meal prepping. Be like, what's a good meal? Go on Pinterest. Go look and see what we could find. Make the whole family involved.
Yeah. And what are the things, again, the foods that are going to serve and to nourish you that you love? And again, my youngest, I can easily prioritize protein there, but a fan favorite of guacamole.
I love guacamole.
I'm like, you are preparing the guacamole because you're the best at this. And again, to your point, it's not about, is it bad or good? It's not about going in and throwing stuff out. We just had Alicia Carlson on the podcast talking about why diets fail. This is not about dieting. It is about finding the diet, meaning the type of food that your body is going to respond best to, that's going to give you the best chance to feel like you and to feel optimistic and positive and able to get through, have the energy to get through whatever it is that you need to do. And I mean, metabolically, it took me a really long time to realize that, when I'm having an interview and I want to ask the right questions, or I'm, studying for something, we need energy for that too. It's not just when we are exercising and moving our bodies, but when we're moving our brains, we need proper nutrition and energy for that as well. And the more that we prioritize that, the better we're going to show up.
Right. And everybody does respond really differently for food. Some people tolerate gluten, some people don't. Some people tolerate dairy, some people don't. You have to know what works for your body. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're eating food that your body recognizes. I always say, if you can't pronounce the ingredients, your body doesn't know what it is.
Exactly. Okay. You have two more that we want to make sure we get into: exercise and meditation.
All right. Let me jump into exercise. Everyone knows that exercise is good for you. There's a lot of studies that even show how well it actually works for depression. It works just as well as any, really pharmaceutical, to be honest, in all the studies that's been showing it. So then the big question is, well, how do I start putting in exercise, right? Do not start running if you hate running.
So simple, Keri.
It will fail. Find what you like. Even if that is just, I'm going to start with 10 minutes of stretching a week. I don't care where you start. Start somewhere. Start taking a walk around your block. It doesn't matter. It's about building the habit in. And then once you start building that habit in, exploring other options, exploring different ways to build this in. What do you like doing? If you don't like doing it, you're not going to stick with it. So you have to find what works for you. I hated running for a very, very long time. I only very recently fell in love with it, but it has to be my way. It has to be a short distance. It has to be a slow speed, and I have to be blasting my music. And that's what works for me.
And to your point, it can also be that in a different season in your life, you may find you like something that you didn't before, or vice versa. Is that something you always did? You're like, I just don't enjoy this. Now, there's I don't know whether it's I've talked to clients and I hear this, or whether I'd consider it the devil's advocate, but there's sort of that feeling, and I know it's the resistance that I don't believe in, but I'm speaking on behalf of everyone who feels like, but really, does that 10 minutes make a difference? And so I guess I do want to make the distinction, if you're able to, between, yes, we want to build the habit. So 5-10 minutes, whatever you can spare that's sustainable, that you can create the habit, is the key to future benefits. Yes, but also, what's the smallest amount of movement? What's happening in the body that does help with, just it could be a general outlook all the way to really helping with depressive states. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yes.
Almost like I want to encourage the minimum amount that you're like, yes, it really is making a difference.
Doing anything where you're moving more is in the positive direction. Absolutely. However, if we're looking at the actual studies, what do we really need to be doing in order to bring a depression down?
Yep.
You probably need to be doing around 30 minutes of cardio 3 times a week.
And that's not bad.
It's not a lot, right? And it could be any type of cardio, anything that's really raising your heart rate. So a lot of people will tell me, I go to the gym and I'm really just still not feeling better. Okay, you need to raise your heart rate a little bit. That's kind of the key when we look at depression. But again, it doesn't have to be a ton. You don't need to run for miles. I don't really love cardio that much. Like I run once a week, but I also do a lot of weights. I love weights, but if I'm doing compound movements with my weights, I'm getting my heart rate up. So there's a lot of ways to tackle it.
Okay, so really, if we get down to the basics here, then it'd be like, what's kicking up the heart rate? That's what's going to be helping. And I'm always looking for the quickest and the simplest, right? I mean, sort of the aspects of productivity of being efficient. Well, high intensity intervals is a great example. So then maybe in that case, I might argue the point that it doesn't necessarily need to be 30. It could be 20 or 15 if you're doing high intensity intervals because you're kicking up the heart rate. So you can play with that. And then
Absolutely.
just like with the food, how do you feel after?
Yes, you know what works for you and what doesn't work. And you have to tweak it. We're constantly changing as human beings, which means what worked for us today may not work for us tomorrow. You have to listen to yourself.
And sometimes it's listening to yourself because you need the novelty and you need the change. And that's what's going to keep you inspired and in the game.
And a workout buddy is always a good thing too.
By the way, obligers, Keri is talking to you. Having a group fitness or an accountability, a workout buddy is especially important for obligers because of that external accountability, although it can be very beneficial for almost everyone. And again, finding the things that you love that are sustainable to you. Awesome. Okay, let's squeak in this one last one. And I've definitely talked about it on the podcast. I do it for my clients. I actually create personal guided meditations for them. Let's talk about meditation as that fifth way physically to boost our wellness that will then help us with the mental health.
Brain scans show when we are meditating, our brain changes. It gets a whole lot calmer. So meditation, everyone's like, I hate meditation. I don't want to do meditation. I'm not good at meditation. So let's say what meditation is. You're not going to have no thoughts in your head. That's impossible. You're going to have thoughts. You're going to be like, oh, what's for dinner tonight? Okay, what's for dinner tonight? I noticed the thought. I'm going to let it go. It's not, what's for dinner tonight? Oh my gosh, I need to go to the grocery store. But if I go to the grocery store, what am I going to cook? And what if I can't find anything? And what if the kids don't like it? That's what you're trying to stop. You're trying to come back to the moment. Really bringing yourself back to the moment. Because when we're in the moment, we're normally not anxious or depressed. Depression normally lives in our past. Anxiety lives in our future. So it's this practice of coming back to the moment constantly. That's what meditation is. And I don't care if someone is sitting there doing a guided meditation. I don't care if someone's sitting there doing a mindful walk of walking and being like, what do I see? What do I hear? It's about coming back in the moment. I love progressive muscle relaxation is another great way that you can meditate, where you go through your whole body, squeezing and releasing and really focusing on how the tension in your body feels and how you can release it. But really, I'm going to call meditation anything that puts you in the moment.
I love that.
You know, when I have clients in front of me who are like, I'm so anxious. I'm like, right now, in this moment, what do you have to be anxious about? And like, well, I have a test. No. I don't care if you have a test tomorrow. In this moment. And it's like, well, yeah, everything's okay in this moment. And that's normally how our life is.
Okay. That's 5 things right there. And again, pick one and go ahead. It can be the water. Keri's recommending that because that is the easiest. But if there's one in there that's like, ooh, oh, hey, I do want to try that like muscle tense and relax thing. That's interesting. And again, this is another example of something that you only need 5-10 minutes. I have a 2-minute guided meditation for transition between tasks so that you don't bring that same frenetic energy from one into the other. It doesn't take long to be effective. And I think that each of these is a great example of it won't take much to make a difference.
If anybody is still out there saying, I don't have the time, this is my challenge to them. I want you to look at your screen time for the day. You have the time. It's just about replacing things.
Yeah, that's where the prioritization comes in. And a way that you can do that is to say, okay, I'm going to drink a cup of water and then play the video game or scroll through reels or whatever it is that makes me happy. But do the thing that you need first. Take the time, replace just a little bit.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful place for us to wrap up. It won't take much to make a difference.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, where are we finding you online so that we can check out your books and get the support that we need for these changes?
My website is Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy. The new website that's coming is Sleep Solutions by Keri, so look out for that. On social media, it's all at Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy. And both of my books are available on Amazon, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know, and Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Teen Needs to Know.
Okay, well, I'll for sure have those in the show notes and on the resources and favorites page of the positivelyproductive.com website. And then we're going to do a quick and fun rapid wrap up. You ready for that?
Yes.
Okay, we're basically looking for three things: a song, a saying, and a resource, all that contribute to your positively living.
Favorite song, Just Breathe by Pearl Jam.
Ooh.
My husband got me a gift where it's a canvas with all the lyrics written out and it hangs in my office.
Nice addition with Pearl Jam, Keri. Thank you. All right. And how about a saying, a quote, a mantra?
Not my monkeys, not my circus.
I love that one. Okay. And a resource. It could be besides your books or an app or anything really that makes your life better.
Yeah, it's an app called Insight Timer. It's free, and there's a ton of meditations on there and like different healing frequencies, and I love it.
I love that you mentioned that, and that has been mentioned repeatedly on the show.
Really?
So yes, and I love that it is awesome. Okay, and last but definitely not least, a little bonus one. Let's talk gratitude today. What are you grateful for today, Keri?
Today I'm grateful for friends because I've already had a really wonderful conversation with one today.
Love that. I'm grateful for friends, and I am grateful for you and for your wisdom and for your willingness to come here and share it with us. Keep shining your light brightly, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.